Well, thank you for coming. And my name's Kathy Beck. I'm a front-end UX engineer here at Oomph. Okay, just making sure it's big enough for everybody to see the font there. In this role, I work with both the design team, the back-end team, and then my coworkers on the front-end team. I've been thinking about client usability, accessibility, and maintaining Drupal sites for years, and you can pretty much find me anywhere on social media at kbeck303. So what we will be discussing today. Today I'll go over what kind of teams I've been on, what tools and processes I've used while being on those teams, what we're currently doing here at Oomph, and what we hope to achieve in the long term. So we'll just get on in. The why. Why I've been thinking about this topic for a long time, like maintaining themes. That's what we do. We build them and then we maintain them until we have to rebuild them. So, and I can't know what I don't know until I know it. There's a lot in Drupal that you don't know. Not to mention developer tools or other methods that we use, and those are constantly changing. My thought for this was a easier barrier to entry, make it easy for people to get into our code. So some of the stuff about me. So some of the teams I've been on, in 2006, I interned in a web shop. Prior to that, I was just doing graphic design work. So that was about 12 years ago. I got into the web industry, did some Drupal building, theming for a small shop, and then I'm here at Oomph, where it's a full-service shop, kind of small, but we work on some huge projects. And I'm part of the Drupal team doing site building and front-end theming while keeping accessibility very high on our thoughts. So my last 3 projects, so the furthest back, I was really focused on component-based theming using Ben. The project after that continued with the component-based theming and really dug into field-level styling in theming, as well as the component-based stuff. And then my current project, our #1 line item, pretty much our goal for the project, is to be accessible. So I have to make sure everything's accessible, but then just, again, try to make everything componentized so that we can build this project out. I did a quick tally of this project's team. We have 12 people on the team. We have 2 PMs, 2 designers, 5 web engineers, 2 UX engineers, 1 content entry person. So we have a lot of people on this project, and anybody could touch any piece of it. So we really want to have it maintainable on large scale projects. So next I'm gonna do a little poll. So these are some of the tools and frameworks I used over the 12 years. So I started with Go Live. Anybody work in Go Live? Anybody work in Dreamweaver? Go Live's Adobe's like first. Like,
yeah, you could do database stuff.
Yeah. 2006. 2006, I was using it. Yeah.
That's crazy. So like, so
Yeah.
they bought macro media. Oh yeah.
Anyone use Coda? I used that for a little bit, and now I'm using Sublime Text. Anyone use anything else?
Yes, so.
Yeah, I like this.
Cool. So nice. So for some pre-processing build tools, we've used Grunt, we've used Brunch, and now, well, we started out with Grunt, then went to Gulp, then went to Brunch, and now we're back to Gulp. So Gulp is for the win so far. And then some frameworks we've used, we did the foundation thing, we went to Bourbon and Neat, and now we're at Bootstrap. And we're sticking with that one. So some environments that I've worked in. Anyone working Drupal 5? Drupal 6, and 7, and now 8. Yeah. 4.7. I worked in 4.7. Well, I don't know if I built anything in 4.7. I blew up a lot of sites in 4.7. Some environments, MAMP Pro. For a while we were using Vagrant running on VirtualBox. Then we were using Vagrant running on Drupal VM. Now we're running Lando running on Docker. And I'll have a little bit more information on that. Here at the office, we still have some projects running on Jenkins, but we're in the process of moving every project over to Travis. Anybody use those two build tools? All right. Now the fun part, how are we doing? I asked a coworker what is his biggest pet peeve when it came to taking over someone else's theme. This is the answer I got. I prefer it to be right, but if it can't be, as long as it's consistent.
Wrong.
Consistent,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, then you can change everything off.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like it's wrong, you know what to expect everywhere when it's wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of having to figure it out all the time. So in this role, so what's our team doing? So right now the design team is thinking about reusable designs. They're having the conversations with the UX and development teams. And now we have the starting point of Bootstrap. So anything that we think of, we want to dial it back to Bootstrap as like the foundation of where things will get built off of. So the design team's using Avocode, InVision App, and Adobe XD as some of their sharing tools and collaboration tools. And then our design and dev team work together to create a module actually on Drupal called Oomph paragraphs, which has a dependency of the regular paragraphs module, but we kind of expanded upon it. And then if we need to use any third-party libraries, the designers are kind of thinking about those at that point, because if we need to go with Flex Slider or Slick Slider over a Bootstrap option, or if we need to pull in a jQuery library, we can have some foundations for what these components and functionality can start from. Then what are our developers doing? Our developers have put out Oomph Scaffold, which is Lando running on Docker. So you need to have Composer and download Lando, which I believe automatically has you download Docker, and pretty much you run through the steps in GitHub and you can kind of have a local environment running that day. And with, oops, sorry, just click happy and click anywhere and it moves on. So with Travis, we have a lot of testing going on. We are running PHP tests, JavaScript tests, we have Sass linter. We're doing some Behat tests. So there's a lot you can do in these frameworks that support reusable code. And as a site builder and a themer, what we've been focusing on is using view modes. using views with content, not fields. This lets you tie into those view modes which make everything so much easier. Writing theme suggestions, doing form alters in the theme file instead of creating templates for forms. You haven't looked into the includes, extends, and embeds within Twig, or even the macros in Twig. There is a lot you can do with those pieces. Then there's setting up variables both in Twig and Sass, and making sure we have some mix-ins and functionalities set up for Sass. Now, I'm going to show some examples of how I would go about doing some of these things. So, get over here. Well, I thought I had it open. I don't. Sorry about that. It will change, so it should keep you entertained for a little while. This takes longer than expected. All right. I guess I'm gonna have to do this. So I quickly, that's not gonna get bigger, is it? I quickly did some dummy mock-up on how I might make a product page. Just high level, how I would go about doing my BEM styles. Like, that's something I've really been thinking about. So this is a page, sample page here, and you'll see I've put in component placeholders here. And the way I'm thinking of it as, this would be your Drupal page. You got your node content here, but then this is a block, that's a block. These are blocks. And I've really spent a lot of time on thinking of how to structure our styles so that, this is probably hard to see, let me, better? I wish I could get this bigger, but I can't. So my template files, you can see, sort of line up with some of my styles. So if I open, here, come back at this. You'll see that my style sheet very much lines up with my template very much lines up with my style sheet. As I'm putting my classes in on my page, I'll have my styles open and just put them in, just so there's placeholders and I can go back and style it, because I'm going to be doing site building first and then theming second. So this kind of sets me up for a good place to jump in and just get styles in and not worry about what I'm naming anything. And you'll see I've put some comments in here. This is for my team. This goes back to some of the documentation stuff for working on larger teams. People might go to different files to add styles. You might go to the product page because you want to add a title, change the title style on that product page. But we might be holding all our styles in a typography page for all our titles. So I've been making comments where I think my team might go and pointing them to the files that I actually want them to put the styles in. In past projects, we've had a project that's been going on for about 4 years, and we probably had about 20 people touch it. And there are, I'm not lying, 6 different form files for styles. So you got forms, then you got like forms search, then you got a bunch of stuff just tucked under the theme styles for forms. So it got real messy and no one knew the right place to put it. So people put it where they felt they should. This gives guidance just so it can stay organized in the long run. So back to some component organizing. I've been trying to really get naming conventions like down. I might actually
When
be.
you do, you let me know. This stuff is so hard.
That's coming up later in the, I'm kind of circling around here, sorry. So you'll see I have some components, and naming conventions get hard when you work with BEM. Has anybody tried naming classes using BEM? How were you successful with it, or did you get like stumbling blocks because it kind of nested too deep and then you couldn't, like, you needed to get back up but you couldn't because you want to? Yeah, I've experienced that too, and I think I found a way around it. Let's take this slideshow component here for an example. Here's my BEM class, my default page banner class. Then here's my modified banner class. So on this site, you can have banners that are maybe just images. This one's a banner that's a slideshow modifier. But then it's also the component wrapper, and the component's just a slideshow. And the way I came to think of it this way is I broke out the component markup on its own so that this now could have its own slideshow styles. So I could potentially come here and do something like this. Oh, my command key's dying. Go like that. So slideshow. Come on. Slide demos. So if I just did this markup, this would be how I would just go about doing this. Now I have my styles that are there in place that match my markup for my slideshow. I don't have to, well, I still thumbnails. I don't have to like go to the template, see where things are. I can just kind of work in the browser and just copy styles out, throw them right in here pretty quick. Compilers get rid of empty spaces and comments, so it's kind of empty calories. So that's just kind of quick high level of how I'm trying to integrate BEM with components in Drupal. But get back to here. Where are we going? Moving forward on some of this. Words are hard. Yeah, naming conventions is definitely high on my list. I would like the whole company, sales, PMs, developers, designers, front end, to have like a collective vocabulary, because is it a node? Is it a single page? Is it a detailed page? It's all of them. Is it a card? Is it a teaser? Is it a slider? Is it a slideshow? Is it a carousel? Is it a form? Is it a contact form? Is it a web form? Those actually have huge implications on wording, because if web form is in your SOW, that could potentially mean installing and configuring a module versus using Drupal core contact forms. So words can hold a lot of meaning in this industry if we don't use them correctly. Also, is it a deal? Is it an offer? Are they categories? Are they taxonomies? Are they terms? One's the other and the others could be the... So it's kind of important for everyone, including the client, and they might actually influence what the project team is calling something, because that's what they relate to, and we need to relate to them. So yeah, naming conventions are hard, so if anyone has it down, let us know. And then you have naming conventions and modifiers for classes. You can go the free-for-all naming convention. A lot of people do it. I showed you a BEM version. There's something out there called SEMBIO. I have an article here.
That is block element modifier.
So this takes it just a little bit further. This part, and then BEM is part of the second part. It has some cool concepts. It's worth a read, this article. But I think Drupal can give you modifiers on its own. I was using, since we're using view modes a lot, you have the view mode type, and then you have the node type tied to the view mode, but then if you're on the node page, you got the page type. So you got two different classes that are defaulted into Drupal. And with Sass, you can always do something like slideshow, but then it might be on my node type page, and you can just do that. And now node type page is your slideshow modifier for that piece of content. So you don't always have to come up with modifiers on your own. Drupal can provide some for you. And did I jump ahead? Also, thinking of code and components, it lets you, and if you think of them in components and then components being libraryable or reused, we're really looking at accessibility, and this can potentially help us fold accessibility into just a standard, kind of like how responsive design is. If we have a chunk of code for the slideshow and we just kind of take it out of one project and put it into another one, and that project had accessibility already in it, that's just going to move over to the next project and already be there. And if we need to add a new feature to that, then that's just builds that components, could build that component setup, which is a cool idea for the future, hopefully not far future. And that kind of brings us into the idea of a code library. I would love to have a code library of some sort where the team can go and say, oh, yeah, here's that bootstrap carousel I know we used on this last project, and plop it into this theme. All the BEM styles are set up. Because we're componentizing it, our style sheet is broken out into its own component along with its template files. So with D8, I feel like it's a lot easier to componentize your theme versus Drupal 7. Does anybody here have a code library or use something similar? Some of the solutions we've talked about, on GitHub, there's a Judah Pulsar had a library. Then there is Stack Overflow for Teams. And we were also thinking potentially just a custom Drupal site. Then there's, so this
Are
has,
you envisioning a library that you include in your projects, and then when you modify or slide a component for accessibility issue, that all the projects built in that same code set?
no, not more like a distribution, more like a, hey, this is like, if we need a slideshow, here's an area where we might have samples of slideshows we've used on other projects. And God, I could see it going even further, like, hey, we used this for this project. It took a junior developer 32 hours to do it. The next project, the code was there. It took a senior developer 8 hours to use it. Like, and maybe it can help sales and resourcing in a way. I don't know. It's just high level thoughts, but just any way to reuse code besides me going back to a different project and copying it out, because that's me knowing a feature on a project I worked on. It's not me sharing my knowledge with my team to make it easier for them to build stuff to the company standard. So yeah, that's my hopes for a library. It's still hopes right here. So I am not. So yeah, that's where we are at Oomph and what we're doing in the future. So a recap, I went over what kind of teams and tools and processes I've used, went over what we're currently doing here at the company for reusable code, and then what we're hoping to do in the future. Anybody have any questions? Or I can show more samples later or something?
So how do you, if you have your code library for the use of reference in the future, how do you avoid the inevitable, it's just a little bit different this time than last time situation?
Ideally, we're having conversations with our design teams before that decision has been made, that when the design team's looking to create a piece of functionality, that they know about this library. They can kind of see the code, but also maybe there's either a screenshot of what was built from it, or even ideally a working sample, and they can then use it too. Like, this is a starting point. And then it opens up that conversation with the team. We have this starting point. The client wants X, Y, Z features added to this. Now it's not starting from scratch and adding all that. It's starting from here and adding these features, which then potentially could get ported back into something like that if everybody's kind of thinking on these pages. I think some kind of library like this is everybody needs to be invested potentially for it to work.
You had mentioned having style sheets on those components that you could have.
Yeah.
How would you handle them looking differently when you need to reuse them? So like, what would be the approach to leveraging or not leveraging those styles that were predefined in the last project or previous projects?
Oh, good question. So say say this was kind of a bigger feature than just a menu footer. Here's some code. Here's the corresponding styles. You could easily strip out the styles and just have the classes. In just having the markup in classes defined, that's a few hours right there already, just kind of saving just by not having to create the markup and come up with classes. But styles might not transfer over unless, as a team, we've decided that all menus should have XYZ styles or variables to be adjusted that sits within this file. But with Twig, it's nice because you can attach libraries right to Twig files. So if your component is in its own Twig file, you can tie your style sheet to that file. So only when that Twig file loads, then those styles get loaded as well. So that's a nice benefit to being able to think about your themes in a componentized way, is potential for performance and reusability. Any other questions?
I don't know, I was just thinking about what you're saying, that naming things is hard, because it's like library, when I hear something's library, I think, oh, jQuery's library, or whatever, I think in that sense. So like, and it seems like what you've got here, I don't know, it's all these words are used, template is used, scaffold is used, everything is something already. But like, I do see what you're saying about just being able to have a sort of a skeleton of just the classes without the styles, so that no matter what colors and fonts and other styles you want to apply to things, you've already got this naming convention as a bare bones sort of thing that you would reach for a component of that type. And it just, I'm not sure what you would need.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Repository of components.
Yeah, maybe that's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, pattern lab. What's in a name?
Oh,
Oh, you're welcome.